What's going on, guys? It's Bryce again. Welcome to another episode of Expedition to Try, where I have no idea what I'm doing with my life, and I'm assuming a lot of you don't either. So we're going to try and figure it out together. If you're new to this podcast, my goal is to introduce you to young artists, musicians, entrepreneurs, creative, passionate people who don't have a lot of fans yet, but we're going to do everything we can to share their story and hopefully get them some more fans. So I'm very excited for today's episode because it's my first Bryce on the show. I'm interviewing another Bryce. Very exciting. So Bryce, do you want to introduce yourself and just say a little about who you are?
Of course. Thanks for the intro, Bryce. I am Bryce number two. My artist name is Healer. Some people call me Healer Bryce, and then I have a few other projects too, like Okay, I'll Write and War is Over are my other bands. But yeah, my name is Bryce from Chicago, living in LA. As of right now, doing the full time music thing, which is really cool and really fun. Um, yeah, I guess that's an intro, right?
Yeah, that's great. So I was gonna ask next about your work experience and stuff. So did you have a job prior? Do you have any part-time job now? What's the story with your job situation?
Yeah, I've always been finding ways I feel like to like skate by the social norm of like trying to work your way up a corporation or whatever people do after college. But yeah, like sometimes I'll drive for Uber on the weekends, or like I was running a house show venue right before COVID and used to do some carpentry, just like whatever it takes to be able to do music when I want to do it. Um, I'm happy to do the odd jobs and weird work, but I feel pretty lucky for the fact that I haven't had to really like venture into that yet, and I'm still young. I'm only 21, so who knows what it will look like. But for right now, I've like made it work where I can say that I'm a full time musician. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, at least.
Very cool. And did you go to college or did you finish high school and just decide to do these odd jobs?
Yeah, I did go to college. I went to Cal Poly in SLO, Central Coast, California, and I'm glad I did. I grew up like kind of in this mentality. I come from a suburb, and it's a pretty privileged suburb, and so there was a mentality of like, oh, this is what you do. You go to college and you get a job, and like doing art, that's ridiculous. Nobody does that. And so I always knew that art was my passion, but I always thought, okay, so you have to go to college first and get a job, and then you do the art on the side. Um, and so I actually went to school for psychology, which I'm sure we'll get into is another huge passion of mine. But while I was studying it, I was just like meeting these cool art people and realizing, oh my gosh, you do not need to have a degree or whatever a real job to do this. Like these people are just out here just making the art. So it was kind of in college that I realized that I was just going to do music and probably not use my degree for a while. Um, but yeah, I did finish. I graduated in like less than 2 years because I was really trying to get to the music quick. So yeah.
So that's interesting. We'll actually go into the college and stuff first before music. So first, how did you choose psychology? When did you know that was the path you wanted to take?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I've known that honestly longer than I've known that music was my passion. Just because I was raised, my mom is a clinical therapist, and so I was raised like in that culture, and I definitely inherited her empathy and her desire to heal, and so I knew that pretty young. She involved me in her community workshops, and so I was just really face to face with like the actual like administrative logistics of psychology from a young age. And so I think like when it came time in high school to be like, all right, you have to start like building an identity, that was like just naturally where I was leaning towards. Because I think that like that was my first um, dream for myself, was that I was like, I'm going to open a clinical therapy practice someday. And I still love the idea of that and I'm not opposed to it. But music has like since then taken over that and I guess intertwined with it too. But yeah, so I've known that I love psychology since I was as young as I can remember.
And what inspired you or motivated you, I guess, to keep going with your major when you did have that realization that you would prefer to do music more full time? What kept you going, like studying? Because classes aren't easy. So,
Right. I think, well, first I tried to switch into the music major, which I'm glad it didn't work out, honestly. Because I don't know. I mean, I think that music education is very valuable, but for like what I do, I was already just doing it. Like I'm a songwriter, you know, I'm a producer, and like I was just doing those things already. And so I'm glad I stayed in psychology because I think that I was realizing that it is so intertwined with what I'm doing. And I mean, you know, with healer, it's literally it's about psychology, it's about mental health and about people. And so I don't think that spending my time learning about how people work is a waste of time at all when I'm trying to do that for a living and help people through music. I think that it kind of gave me the background I needed. And then I also think that I'm just like I'm totally geared towards those kind of classes. And Cal Poly was so good with like making them feel important. Like I got to do classes where I was taking on clients as a therapist, which is just like not a normal thing that an undergrad program would do. And so I was like just, you know, very excited by that too.
very cool. So to start going a little bit more into the music, what would you say are some of your first memories of music of any type? Not necessarily you playing or like first song you ever heard, like any first memory you can think of all the way back.
Oh man. I had an interesting like I feel like you wouldn't guess my childhood musical experience from looking at me because I wasn't one of those. I mean, I loved music, but I wasn't one of those kids where you're like, oh, they're gonna be a
Yeah.
pop star, you know, like they were like singing runs since they were two. I was like, I listened to music, but it was weird. Like I had a Naked Brothers band MP3 player,
Hell yeah.
and I remember that I had my parents' iTunes library on there. And so like I was hearing some weird stuff. It was like probably a mix of like 90s country, Red Hot Chili Peppers, like the Beatles, just like I don't know, whatever my parents had like whatever CDs they had gotten from the library and put on iTunes. Um but yeah, then the thing is I had like an experience. Like I feel like I had a music like realization moment where I was like, "Oh my god, I love music." And I see that as like that was when I really discovered it versus like obviously I knew music and music was a part of my life, but
Mhm.
when I was 14, that was when it like hit like, "Oh, this is real." And the thing that made me have that reaction was um Jack Johnson song. I
Mm.
discovered him when I was 14 and I was like, "Oh my god, this is like speaking to me like nothing ever has." It was like some Pandora like beach station or something. And yeah, I'd say that's the moment where I was like, "Oh, this is something I need to look into this."
So what did you do when you had that mental switch? Did you just go out and buy a guitar? What was the first step after making that realization that I really want to pursue something with this? I got to figure this out.
Yeah, that's a good question. I was lucky because my parents were very encouraging of just doing like a lot of things. And so I had done like I played like every sport when I was younger and did all the clubs and all that. And so my mom had signed me up for guitar lessons. And that was like it's interesting because it was like at first a lot of work, and I'm sure a lot of people have had this experience. And I feel like I had to like grind through that to get to the point where I loved it. And so it's like all it was a slow and steady process of like, okay, now I've realized that I love music, and now I'm like I'm doing music, but I don't have like the proficiency to say I love doing music yet. And at that point, I would have never sang either. And so that was the first step was guitar lessons to just get my foot in the door. But like I wasn't singing, I wasn't writing yet. So yeah, I guess that was the first step, and I'm very glad for that step because that has led me to everything else.
And when you started taking guitar lessons, were you the patient type who was willing to put in all the hours necessary, or were you the I don't know if you'll understand this reference, but the Ned's Declassified that just wanted to go right into the rock and roll scene? How were you when you first started taking guitar lessons?
That's man, I guess you know what? I feel like I wish I could say I was like sitting down every day to grind on it, but honestly, I feel like I was a procrastinator and like I knew it was fun and I like it still just kind of felt like homework at first where I'm like, "Ah, I got to sit down and like do the scales and all that." And when you're that young and like you don't like I didn't know at that point that I wanted a career and so like I didn't know what the stakes were for learning and so I'm like, oh, why would I sit here and just like do the scales? I don't really want to do that. So it took me a while. Like I would say probably over a year before I was really like, okay, this is something I do want to invest in. But then after that, I'd say it took like another year to be like, okay, this is something that like there's the technical aspect, and then you have to find the creative aspect from there. And then once both of those trains are rolling, I feel like it's easier to be justifying the work for both because something's actually moving.
Mhm.
So long answer, but I feel like it took me a while to actually be like, I need to work on this.
Yeah. So that's something that's very interesting to me because it seems as though pretty much with anything artistic, it seems like obviously you're not going to be at a stage when you first start that you're going to be good, unless you're one of those born prodigies, obviously.
Mm,
But how do you think people can stay motivated in those early stages when they know they would like to learn, but they have to put
mm.
in all these hours and time and like get all those dents in their fingers, like all the hardships? How do you keep yourself motivated and push through those couple of years in the beginning?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think you have to be setting small goals for yourself. And if you can have someone like a teacher to keep you accountable, I think that's really good. Or like something like start a band. I don't know, something that keeps you like, I'm gonna learn this song by this time, and or like maybe seeing concert and being like, "Ah, I really need to do this." It's just like it's because it's a personal choice. You're using your free time. It just has to come from like your internal desire, and I think just setting small goals just based on your passion is it works. I think especially if you're older and you have like a little more of like a higher thought process because I think with kids it's so in the moment that it's like, oh, you're giving me extra homework. So I don't know, I think it's easier when you're older to be able to be like, I want to do this by
Yeah.
this time and I'll
Uh,
push myself to get there.
and how did you then go from guitar into singing? What was that process?
That was I was probably almost 17 at that point. So I was starting Wars Over with Cam, my best friend Cam. He's a singer, and so we were just starting to write songs together, and he was the singer and I was the instrument guy. But I had discovered it might have been on Pandora as well. Actually, I discovered Bright Eyes. This is not a Pandora ad, but yeah, I discovered Bright Eyes, and he is, and I'm wearing his shirt right now. I'm realizing he is like very like Bob Dylan-y, like it's almost talk singing, but it's got like so much like raw emotion in it, and I was just so blown away by that. Um, and it gave me the confidence to be like, whoa, this guy is like he does not have a normal singing voice, and he's almost like not even hitting pitches sometimes. It's like so conversational that I think I could try this at least.
Mhm.
Because I was so self conscious. I was like, I just can't do this. But I was like, oh, talk singing, okay. And that was the start. And that was when I started Okay, I'll Write, which is my very emo project. And I'm like starting to sing more traditionally on there a little bit, but it's even now it's like pretty talky, like poetry flow. Um, and yeah, so when I was 17, that's what gave me the confidence to be like, okay, maybe I could figure this out and I don't have to just be like behind the scenes. Because I definitely wanted to be a singer and like a front man and all that, but it just, I had a lot of identity I needed to fill out and the technical sides I had to figure out too.
Who doesn't have that social anxiety
Of
back at
course.
in high school years? Actually, funny enough,
Absolutely.
I did a little more research on you after I had messaged you, and I realized that I didn't realize that you were uh, the other guy in War Is Over.
Yeah.
So I messaged you and then you and Cam's account. So
Nice.
you can disregard that message if you see it. Actually, too, I almost messaged okay, all right, but there wasn't an Instagram page that I could find. So I didn't message it. I almost messaged you 3
Wow.
times.
Oh my gosh.
That's how much I wanted
Yeah,
you on
I
the
run
show.
into that with having so many bands. There's this guy, man, I can't remember his name now. I don't want to guess and get it wrong, but he's the guy from Fox Academy, and he has like 7 different projects, and I didn't even know that, and I loved like all of them separately. And I was at a Fox Academy show, and I was like, "Oh my god, you're Fox Academy and you're Richie Woods?" And then he's like, "Oh, dude, you gotta go check out. I got like 4 more bands you gotta listen to too." I was like, "Oh my god, you're them too." He's like, "Oh hello," or not "Oh hellos." "Oh never mind." Fox Academy, Richie Woods, Beagles, I think. It's like all the same guy, and I love that stuff. I'm trying to be that too.
So what genre would you say you tend to fall into?
I think that in my heart, I think I've got emo and I've got folk,
Hmm.
and that is mostly who I am. But I really do love pretty much everything, and I am also leaning a little more towards indie pop these days. Um, so I think somewhere around there, but like no matter where I go, I would be rooted in emo and folk, I would say.
And what's your process with writing your lyrics? Would you say you tend to like sit down and write poetry and then turn it into a song, or do you sit down knowing you want to write a song and just write it like it's poetry, or just are poetry and music separate for you, or is it all kind of the same when you write?
Hmm. I mean, they're certainly very near each other, but I do think that typically I would know that I'm writing a song or know that I'm writing a poem, because I think at least for me, if I'm writing poetry, it's a little more freeform, and I wouldn't be trying to like fit it into a certain structure as much. And when I write songs, obviously I'm mostly worried about what I'm saying, and I pretty much write it as if I'm writing poetry, except that I do usually think like, okay, this is a section, and like it's gonna flow into this section, and maybe this will repeat, and maybe these will rhyme. And so I think there's a little more convention in that for me. But I do think like the root of the songwriting is just that it's like supposed to be a no frills, like genuine expression of emotion, which is the same way that I would approach a poem. So I think they're very close together, but they have differences.
And would you say you have a daily or weekly routine with writing? Do you have designated times when you want to write, or do you let it happen just when inspiration strikes?
Yeah, I definitely have to be feeling it. Or at least I think that a lot of my writing comes from um like experiencing something and then sitting with the experience for a while, and usually getting past the feelings of the experience so that I can like process them a little more, and then I'll just write whenever that happens. And I'm like I'm always taking like notes on my phone, and just like writing down lines when they come, and then just being like, okay, I know this is good and it's a good idea, and probably in the next like month I'll just at some point want to work on it and have like some vision to finish it. Because I mean, I've tried to force things, and it's just like I'm not someone who would ever put something out that didn't have like a message that meant something to me,
Mhm.
or like was a genuine thought. And so it's hard to sit there and like if I'm like in a wave of depression, it's hard to sit there and be like, I'm gonna write a cool pop song right now. And I just don't really try to do that. I haven't really needed to yet. So yeah, definitely more of it in the moment.
And touching on that a little bit, how do you personally deal with those tougher days or whatever bad moments you might go through? Are you your own therapist with your major, or how do you tend to go through that process of getting over those hurdles and obstacles?
I do think that being in psych helps me a lot. Like I know how I should be dealing with things, and I feel like I notice more when I'm not doing that. But it's definitely not easy. I would say that like I've really been trying to figure that out this year because it's kind of my first year like really on my own. Like I graduated in COVID, and so moving out to LA and like being totally on my own terms has forced me to have to find ways to deal with those things. And I think like for depression, the important thing for me is that I'm like breaking routine and also getting out of my room because it's so like my depression is so based on like just dreading things and kind of like floating away from my life. And if I'm not like doing something that's like keeping me anchored in the moment and I'm just like I don't know, like just sitting around my room, I tend to like float away a little bit.
Mhm.
But like doing things like going for a walk or going to the gym or going out to write a song or something or like see some friends, anything like that, just to like get me going and moving. I feel like I can avoid it pretty well. Well, not avoid, that's the wrong word. I'm trying to not be avoided because I do think I'm predispositioned to avoid.
Mhm.
But I would say avoiding it would be more like trying to numb it, and I think that I'm finally good at not doing that.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah,
And
that's where I'm at.
do you follow any sort of philosophy, or do you use any sort of meditative practice or anything like that? Or is it mainly when you start feeling those things, you just need to re anchor yourself to the world?
Yeah, I mean, I am a big proponent for meditation. I wish I did it more. I haven't made it a habit yet. I'm really trying, um, but it usually is reactionary, and I'm working towards it being more preventative. Um, but yeah, I don't really have as good of tools as I would like yet. But I bought a yoga mat last week, so
That's the first step.
right.
Step two is just leave it on your floor so then you see
Mm,
it.
I wish I had the space for that.
So going back to music a little bit, who are some of your inspirations in music?
Like I said, definitely Jack Johnson and Bright Eyes are foundational for sure. And then just like I'll just throw some out for the folk stuff, like Mumford, Lumineers, Head in the Heart, people like that, like Walter Mitty. And then for the emo stuff, definitely Bright Eyes, Flat Sound, Wonder Years, Modern Baseball, Front Bottoms. And then for the pop stuff, definitely Cave Town is number one. He's like my favorite right now. Like Hobo Johnson,
Mm.
um, Mac DeMarco. I feel like I have people in like every genre, but those are just coming to my mind right away. Beatles too. Oh, I like Americana too. If you see that as separate from folk, like Houndmouth, Jason Isbell, Sergil Simpson, people like that too.
And if you could go back and choose any one song to listen to for the first time, what would you listen to if you can think of one?
Hmm. My first thought is Scott Street by Phoebe Bridgers because I think that like when I hear music for the first time, it takes a little bit to like grow on me and like for me to have a emotional connection with it. And honestly, a lot of times I don't even really like songs right away. It's like songs that are now my favorite or bands that are my favorite. I didn't like them at first, except with Phoebe and Scott Street. I was just like, I literally remember where I was when I heard that song. I was laying on my basement couch and it was like 2 in the morning, and I was like, I heard people talking about Phoebe. It was probably like 2017 or whenever her album came out, and I listened to that song and I was just like blown away. I was in tears the first listen, and like I that has never happened to me before or after that. So thanks, Phoebe.
And who do you aspire to be like, if anybody, or would you rather be your own artist? Do you get any inspiration from other people when you're writing and making music?
Totally, I think it's pretty much impossible not to. But I think that like I definitely have always been really kind of obsessed with being unique and like innovative and being and like having a identity that's tied to me. But that being said, like I build that by taking small things from other people. You know, like that's what I like about this person. I want to incorporate that. Um, so yeah, I definitely am very inspired by others. But I'm not trying to like follow a formula of someone else.
And what is, because you're the first person I've talked to in music who is doing it like as a full-time thing. So what does your daily, weekly, monthly routine look like with doing music as a, I don't want to call it a job, but as your full-time passion, we'll say.
Yeah. It's I think like it's a little different for me because I produce myself and I produce a few other people and I want to produce as like just as much as I want to be an artist. So I think like most of my time is just literally spent on the projects like in Logic, just mixing. Just because I have so many bands, so much unreleased music that I'm always behind on. So I would say that's an everyday multiple hour thing is producing and mixing. Um, but other than that, it's like it's kind of tough because it's such a subjective thing and when you have nobody telling you what to do and it's like I'm not at a level I do have a label and like a team right now, but it's not like they're like on me like this is what you need to do today, here's your schedule. It's still like a we support you, do what you want to do. And so like trying to make a schedule for myself is hard. I think that um it's like definitely like I have a lot of free time, but also because there's not a schedule, it's like every second I'm thinking about, oh, I should be doing something for music, or like, oh, I'm wasting time right now. I should like be productive, which is tough because I'll even be thinking that at like 2 in the morning, and it's like other people get to turn their brain off after like 5. Um, but I'm not complaining. It's great, and I think like when I'm not producing, I usually am still doing something music based. Like I'll just be playing guitar, just like trying to think of ideas or like I do try to intentionally sit down and write every couple days too. Um, and then also another huge, I hate to say it, but huge time consuming part is that I'm trying to do a TikTok a day, and
Yeah.
I'm not like naturally inclined to be a TikTok person, and so that takes a lot of effort and mental strain, honestly.
Yeah, that's been hard for me personally for sure. I'm an artist, so I paint. So I'm trying
Oh,
to
awesome!
now post more. I want to be able to like cuz I think it's one of the best ways to grow and get yourself in front of more people is to post more, and
Totally,
cuz the more you post, the more likely other people are going to see it. So that's what I'm definitely working on now. TikTok is hard. And in my eyes it seems like the reason it is difficult conceptually is because we're, I guess, overthinking it. I think for me personally, I always think like, "Oh, that's a dumb video. Why would I post that? No one would like that."
mm,
When in reality, TikTok, Instagram, it can really be whatever you want it to be, and people will either like it or they won't. But
of
you
course,
shouldn't really care that much about it. That's how I see it, at least. I don't know if you want to
totally.
touch on that more.
And you know what? The videos that you think are really dumb are probably the ones that would get 3 million likes somehow. But it's so crazy. It's like a whole new era of like make just so much content and just throw it out there, and most of it will not be seen and will just fall into the void, and then like one thing works. And I think that's kind of even in music now, that's kind of the mentality is like a lot of people are just putting out like single until something works, and if it doesn't, then no harm, it just falls away and people don't care. And it's like there's just so much content these days that you have to be consistent or else people just forget super quick.
Mhm.
And TikTok is so crazy because it's like you said, it can be anything. It could be a video of like your friends drunk and like I don't know. It doesn't have to be anything at all, and it can get millions of views. But then you also don't want to be like pigeonholed into some like one thing. Like not I'm not to like throw shade at her, but there's a girl who like just imitates birds and has like 5 million followers, and it's great. She's really good at it, but it's like then you're the bird imitator, and and so like my battle with TikTok is like I'm just not really like predisposed to be like playing into trends or like building myself up as like this marketable like piece of content. And so it's like trying to find a balance of making something that people want to see and will like and will follow me for, and that gives them value, and then that is also authentic to me and I enjoy making and feel represents me. I feel like that's a pretty hard line to walk that I haven't really figured out yet.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. I think just building a consistent habit with it is the key. So if that does mean even just starting at one video per week of you just
Mhm.
sitting there, like I tried to do like one painting a week at least and post something. And then once you form that habit, then you can work on maybe I can do two a week or something like that. Like you just
Totally.
have to slowly build yourself up, I guess. And
Absolutely.
someday something will happen, most likely, if your stuff is good. Like people will find it if it's good enough.
Right. I totally feel that way, and I used to be kind of worried with music because I kind of saw it as like you just do your thing and you just hope that you get discovered by a major label someday. And it's just not really like that anymore, and it's kind of like there's a lot of people who are like hungry for content and for things that they relate to and songs that they relate to. And if you're grinding and you're like growing, it just like when you have the right song or you're ready for the next step, it tends to happen pretty naturally and organically when you're putting yourself out there. And so it's a lot less scary because it's like then you can measure the steps along the way and be like, okay, yeah, I have thousands of fans and that's amazing and they like what I'm doing. And so like what do I need to change to make this number bigger or make those people even more invested in what I'm doing? And along the way at some point that turns a page and it's like, okay, now this is like a career. So
Mm.
it's just very gradual. I think that's the theme of the episode so far.
And can you just touch on a little more about those odd jobs that you do pick up? What's the like what reasons will you pick up those jobs? Are there times during each month where it's like, "Oh shoot, I got to make a little extra money. I better do this." Or do you just do it because you want to and you want to make a little extra money? Like are you stable enough with doing music that you don't have to but you can choose to? How do those odd jobs come into play?
Yeah, I wish I was stable enough with with just music. I'm not. I can't pay rent yet. We'll get there though. But with the jobs, it is like kind of out of necessity, but I do think like I choose that route because I really value like new experiences, and I think that like doing random stuff like that just is more interesting and captivating, and like usually like there's enough random Craigslist carpentry that you can make enough money versus a normal minimum wage job anyway. Now that I'm like an adult, like I'm out of school, I've been thinking about how I can like kind of like do that in a way that where you can also just sustain your life, because before this year it was obviously not me having to like pay rent and pay utilities and stuff. So I don't know, I'm not like one to give advice. I'm very new to this, but but yeah, I just really value like new experiences and also meaningful work.
Mhm.
Um, so like just finding a balance of like helping an old lady move boxes on the weekend sounds way better to me than having to like work certain hours and have a boss.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd take a little pay cut for that.
No, I totally feel that. I'm all about more I like part-time jobs more than
Mhm,
anything. I would rather have like 2, 3 part-time jobs as opposed to one 9 to 5. It just
totally.
cuz
Yeah.
it gives you that like switch up every once in a while. Now though, my last job I was working at my family's ice cream shop, but
Oh, nice.
we closed for the season, so now I'm jobless. I tell people I'm retired now, but I it's but I would rather, like, do something like that, work 20 to 30 hours a week scooping ice cream for people and feeling like I'm doing something a little more meaningful than just sitting at a desk for 8
Yeah,
hours a day, like, and then being able to work on the podcast, write blogs, paint, like, I would much rather have the time to do those things and
yeah,
make a
that's
little
great.
money from a part-time job.
That sounds like a very healthy balance.
And oh, what was I gonna ask? I always forget at least one question. What would be your ideal either daily routine or just like life routine surrounding your music? Do you want to be working a certain number of hours on music? How would you like your routine to play out basically?
I think that no matter what happens career wise, I think that I would always be making music anyway. It's like such a part of me, and I've like it's such a part of my routine anyway that like I would be doing it whether it was something that seemed like I could make a living off it or not. So yeah, I would say like ideally I would have multiple hours a day for music, but I also think ideally it wouldn't be structured in any way because I think like it comes in waves of wanting to produce versus write or like play live or there are all these different aspects and I'm not always wanting to do all of them. And so I do think like just having some time to just pursue whatever I'm feeling that day creatively would be really good. And that's pretty much what I do now. But obviously there's a lot of stuff that like can't just be on a when you want it kind of schedule. Like the TikToks is
Mhm.
that's an everyday thing, whether I'm feeling it that day or not. So having the
And
time but the freedom, that's what would be
yeah,
great.
yeah, no, absolutely, I feel that. What are some of your short term and or long term goals for your music career?
I'd say in the short term, I'm just really like wanting to get to a point where I know that this will be a lifelong thing. That would be really nice if like there's just one song or something works enough to where I'm like okay, like now this is big enough to where like I can like pay for what I need to pay for, and this will last. Um, and I'm like I'm not that worried about it. I think it will happen. I still have a lot of time, but that is definitely like what consumes my short term thoughts. But then long term, I with Healer specifically, I really want to like bring it past music because I think like music is definitely a passion of mine, but like the underlying passion below it, like at the heart of it, is that I want to help people. And so I want Healer to be more of like a social platform kind of thing, or like a force for good, positive change more than I care about it being like a successful musical project. And so I think taking notes from like Jack Johnson and his environmentalism, I think that's kind of where I want Healer to go is like, how can I take this? And obviously the music can make meaningful change and it does, but how can I take that and do some like objective good as well? Um, and I think that will probably mean charity and like mental health awareness. But I don't really know the specifics of that yet because we got a while to go first. But that's my long term vision for sure.
And how do you think your music will play into like life in general? Because a lot of the music that's out now is it seems to be those TikTok songs that are just catchy and with a
Mm.
good beat, and yours is very different than that. Like it actually seems to have a deep rooted meaning to it. So do you think there's definitely a place for that now, or do you think it's going to be something that plays out more long term, that people start turning towards those musical artists?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that there will always be a need for that, and there is a need now. Um, but it's just like we're at a point with media where it's like I said, it's so oversaturated that like there's just everything. Like there's popular versions. There's certain popular people who will do meaningful storytelling lyrics, and there's a lot of popular people who will do music that's just about the vibe, and like both are valid. And I think most listeners need both. Not everyone, I guess, but um, yeah, I think there's a need now, and I think it will only keep growing. Um, but yeah, like that's always been a thing. People relating to their favorite artists on a deep level and having that like be a part of their identity or a part of how they see the world. Um, so yeah, I'm confident that there's a place for that, especially because I think like I'm lucky that naturally my music like tends towards mental health awareness, and so I think that there's definitely a strong personal connection there. Um, and I think the way that society has like accepted mental health as like a new wave of thought, um, I think it will only keep growing. So I do feel good about that prospect.
And how do you feel about people pursuing creative fields more so for monetary value as opposed to doing it because they actually enjoy doing it?
I mean, I think we need people like that because a lot of the industry just runs on people doing jobs, but also you can see it in the fact that music is being ruled by TikTok kids right now, and it's just a fact that like when money is the primary objective, the art suffers.
Mhm.
So like obviously we need bookers and we need managers and like those people, they I guess they can have whatever motivation they want, but as long as the art is staying pure and labels aren't treating it like a commodity that needs to be finely packaged, I think that it's totally fine whatever motivation you have to be here.
Mhm. And what sort of advice would you give to younger you, even though you are very young, only 21? You can go as far back as you want to go. What advice would you give yourself?
I think I would just say mainly that it's gonna work out and it's gonna be okay, and like the feelings that keep you up at night are not absolute and they're temporary, and like just keep going, keep growing. um yeah, I think I just needed more confidence my whole life, honestly. I think that that's one of the most important things is believing in yourself, even it doesn't have to be all the time, but just knowing that you're valuable and that the world needs you. It's a
And
good thing to know.
what sort of advice would you give to anyone who's looking to start something creative, whether it be music or art or whatever it is, and someone who's like maybe just afraid to take that first step?
Yeah, you just got to do it, and like don't wait on people to tell you how, because if you are following someone else it makes you a lot less creative, and you don't really realize it when it's happening, but like those first foundational choices that you make really like define you and define your workflow and your sound and identity later on more than you would expect. And so like if you want to record or become a recording artist or and anything like that or be a songwriter, like I think that if you can, you should just get the gear yourself and just mess around with it, write the songs, just do it because you can and you're more capable than you think, and that will set you up to be so much more self-sufficient later on, and so much more creative. Like I think that teaching myself to produce and not, I mean obviously that has downsides because I'm sure I do some stupid stuff, but like it makes everything I do like more personal to me. um and it also takes away like what we were talking about earlier with guitar, it takes away kind of like the homeworky science of it because it becomes like you're exploring and you're the objective like technology side of music becomes part of the art too, because it's a now a tool that will like change your sound and help you express yourself better. So just go do it and just figure it out, and don't wait for other people to tell you how.
Awesome. And what do you have coming out? What can new and current fans be on the lookout for from Healer or any of your other bands? You can say.
Yeah, I'm sitting on so much music right now. I think the thing I'm most excited for is I have a OK Alright album completely done that I'm hoping will be out soon. It's like it's done, but I need to mix it and master it, which I'm doing in a couple weeks. So I'm very excited for that. I have a few Healer singles coming out, but nothing is planned. or nothing's like scheduled yet. And then we've got a War is Over EP as well. And I didn't even mention it. My other band, Internet Friends, has its first EP, and we're almost done with that too. So I'm sitting on a lot. So if you're a fan, I don't know if I have any actual fans who would be worried about this, but I've got so much stuff coming.
Awesome. So, where can people find you on social media, or where can they listen to your music?
Music's on all the streaming platforms. Healer, okay, all right, War is Over, and then I'm Healer Bryce on Instagram, and that's pretty much the main one I use.
All right, very cool. I'll link all those in the description below so you can go check out Bryce, not me, this Bryce, the cooler one. Is
Aw.
is there anything else you want to touch on before we wrap up? Any other advice or asks you want for people?
Um, how about a song recommendation?
All right, sounds good.
I've been listening to a lot of this guy Sipper recently. He's so good. Let me look at what song.
Is that Sipper?
Yeah, Sipper.
Okay,
I'll recommend Hatch. Actually, no, Adam Driver by Sipper. That's my recommendation today.
okay.
He's very cool.
I'll listen to that as soon as we hang up.
Amazing.
All right, awesome. Well, Bryce, thank you so much for being on. Had a great time. If I'm ever
Thanks
out
for
in
having me.
LA, I'll be sure to hit you up, and
Yeah,
maybe I could see you live or something like that when you're big
absolutely.
music.
That would be awesome. You're welcome here anytime.
Awesome. So, thank you everyone for listening. Go check out Bryce on all his many musical endeavors. Uh, See you next time. Peace out and good luck, everybody. Have a good one.
Adios.